Du Bois, The Souls of Black Folks. Why did God make me an outcast and a stranger in my own house? The shades of the prison house closed round about us all, while straight and stubborn to the widest, but relentlessly narrow, tall and unscalable to sons of night, who must plod darkly on in resignation, or beat unavailing palms against the stone, or steadily, half hopelessly, watch the streak of blue above. After the Egyptian and Indian, the Greek and Roman, the Teuton and Mongolian, the Negro is a sort of seventh son, born with a veil and gifted with second sight in this American world. A world which yields him no true self-consciousness, but only lets him see himself through the revelation of the other world. It is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, the sense of always looking at oneself with the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. One ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body, whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. The history of the American Negro is the history of his strife, this longing to attain self-consciousness, manhood, to emerge his double self into a better and truer self. This merging he wishes neither of the older selves to be lost. He would not Africanize America, for America has too much to teach the world in Africa. He would not bleach his Negro soul in a flood of white Americanism, for he knows that Negro blood has a message for the world. He simply wishes to make it possible for a man to be both a Negro and an American, without being cursed and spit upon by his fellows, without having the doors of opportunity closed roughly in his face. This, then, is the end of his striving, to be a co-worker in the kingdom of culture, to escape both death and its isolation, to husband and use his best powers and his latent genius. These powers of body and mind have in the past been strangely wasted, dispersed or forgotten. The shadow of a mighty Negro past flits through the tales of Ethiopia, the shadowy and of Egypt the Sphinx. Through history, the powers of single black men flash here and there, like falling stars, and die sometime before the world has rightly gauged their brightness. Here in America, in the few days since emancipation, the black man's turning hither and thither in hesitant and doubtful striving has often made his very strength to lose effectiveness, to seem like absence of power, like weakness. And yet it is not weakness, it is the contradiction of double aims, the double-aimed struggle of the black artisan, on the one hand to escape white contempt for a nation of mere hewers of wood and drawers of water, and on the other hand to plow and nail and dig for a poverty-stricken horde, could only result in making him a poor craftsman, for he had but half a heart in either cause. By the poverty and ignorance of his people, the Negro minister or doctor was tempted towards quackery and demagoguery, and by the criticisms of the other world toward ideals that made him ashamed of his lowly task. The would-be black savant was confronted by the paradox that the knowledge his people needed was a twice-told tale to his white neighbors, while the knowledge which would teach the white world was Greek to his own flesh and blood, the innate love of harmony and beauty that set the ruder souls of his people a-dancing and a-singing raised but confusion and doubt in the soul of the black artist, for the beauty revealed to him was the sole beauty of a race, which his larger audience despised, and he could not articulate the message of another people. This waste of double aims, this seeking to satisfy two unreconciled ideals, has wrought sad havoc with the courage and faith and deeds of 10,000 people, of 10,000 people, has sent them often wooing false gods and invoking false means of salvation, and at times has even seemed about to make them ashamed of themselves. Away back in days of bondage, they thought to see in one divine event the end of all doubt and disappointment. Few men ever worshipped freedom with half such unquestioning faith as did the American Negro for 2 centuries. To him, so far as he thought and dreamed, slavery was indeed the sum of all villainies, the cause of all sorrow, the root of all prejudice. Emancipation was the key to a promised land of sweeter beauty than ever stretched before the eyes of wearied Israelites. In song and exhortation swelled one refrain: liberty. In his tears and curses, the God he implored had freedom in his right hand. At last it came, suddenly, fearfully, like a dream. With one wild carnival of blood and passion came the message, his own plaintive cadences. Shout, O children, shout, you're free, for God has brought you liberty. Years have passed away since then, 10, 20, 40. 40 years of national life, 40 years of renewal and development, and yet the swarthy spectre sits in the accustomed seat at the nation's feast. In vain do we cry to this our vastest social problem. Take any shape but that, and my firm nerves shall never tremble. The nation has not yet found peace from its sins. The freedman has not yet found in freedom his promised land. Whatever of good may have come in these years of change, the shadow of a deep disappointment rests upon the Negro people. A disappointment all the more bitter because the unattained ideal was unbounded save by the simple ignorance of a lowly people. The first decade was merely a prolongation of the vast search for freedom, the boon that seemed ever barely to elude their grasp. Like a tantalizing will-o'-the-wisp, maddening and misleading the headless host. The Holocaust of war, the terrors of the Ku Klux Klan, the lies of the carpetbaggers, the disorganization of industry, and the contradictory advice of friends and foes, left the bewildered serf with no new watchword beyond the old cry for freedom. As the time flew, however, he began to grasp a new idea. The ideal of liberty demanded for its attainment powerful means, and these the 15th Amendment gave them. The ballot, which before he had looked upon as a visible sign of freedom, he now regarded as the chief means of gaining and perfecting the liberty with which war had partially endowed him. And why not? Had not votes made war and emancipated millions? Had not votes enfranchised the freedom? Was anything impossible to a power that had done all this? 1,000,000 black men started with renewed zeal to vote themselves into the kingdom. So the decade flew away, the revolution of 1876 came, and left the half-free serf weary, wandering but still inspired. Slowly but steadily in the following years, a new vision began gradually to replace the dream of political power. A powerful movement, the rise of another ideal to guide the unguided, another pillar of fire by night after a clouded day. It was the ideal of book learning, the curiosity born of compulsory ignorance, to know and test the power of the Kabbalistic letters of the white man, the longing to know. Here at last seemed to have been discovered the mountain path to Canaan, longer than the highway of emancipation and law, steep and rugged, but straight, leading to heights high enough to overlook life. Up the new path the advance guard toiled slowly, heavily, doggedly. Only those who have watched and guided the faltering feet, the misty minds, the dull understandings of the dark pupils of these schools know how faithfully, how piteously, this people strove to learn. It was weary work. The cold statistician wrote down the inches of progress here and there, noted also where here and there a foot had slipped or someone had fallen. To the tired climbers the horizon was ever dark, the mists were often cold. The cannon was always dim and far away. If, however, the vistas disclosed as yet no goal, no resting place, little but flattery and criticism, the journey at least gave leisure for reflection and self-examination. It changed the child of emancipation to the youth with dawning self-consciousness, self-realization, self-respect. In those somber forests of his striving, his own soul rose before him, and he saw himself, darkly as through a veil, and yet he saw in himself some faint revelation of his power, of his mission. He began to have a dim feeling that, to attain his place in the world, he must be himself and not another. For the first time he sought to analyze the burden he bore upon his back, the dead weight of social degradation partially masked behind a half-named Negro problem. He felt his poverty without a cent, without a home, without lands, tools, or savings. He had entered into a competition with rich land and skilled neighbors. To be a poor man is hard, but to be a poor race in a land of dollars is the very bottom of hardships. He felt the weight of his ignorance, not simply of letters, but of life, of business, of the humanities, the accumulated sloth and shirking and awkwardness of decades and centuries shackled his hands and feet. Nor was his burden all poverty and ignorance. The red stain of bastardy, which 2 centuries of systemic legal defilement of Negro women had stamped upon his race, meant not only the loss of ancient African chastity, but also the hereditary weight of a mass corruption from white adulteries, threatening almost the obliteration of the Negro home. A people thus handicapped ought not to be asked to race with the world, but rather allowed to give all his time and thoughts to its own social problems. But alas, while sociologists gleefully count his bastards and his prostitutes, the very soul of the toiling, sweating black man is darkened by the shadow of a vast despair. Men call the shadow prejudice, and learnedly explained it as a natural defense of culture against barbarism, learning against ignorance, purity against crime, the higher against the lower races. To which the Negroes cries Amen, and swears that so much of this strange prejudice as is founded on just homage to civilization, culture, righteousness, and progress, he humbly bows and meekly does obeisance. But before that nameless prejudice that leaps beyond all this, he stands helpless, dismayed, and well nigh speechless before that personal disrespect and mockery, the ridicule and systemic humiliation, the distortion of fact and wanton license of fancy, the cynical ignoring of the better and the boisterous welcoming of the worse, to the all-pervading desire to inculcate disdain for everything black, from Toussaint to the devil. Before this, there rises a sickening despair that would disarm and discourage any nation, save that black host to whom discouragement is an unwritten word. But the facing of so vast a prejudice could not bring the inevitable self-questioning, self-disparagement, and lowering of ideals which ever accompany repression and breed in an atmosphere of contempt and hate. Whisperings and portents came home upon the 4 winds. Lo, we are diseased and dying, cried the dark hosts. We cannot write, our voting is vain. What need of education, since we must always cook and serve? And the nation echoed and enforced this self-criticism, saying, be content to be servants, and nothing more. What need of higher culture for half-men? Away with the black man's ballot by force or fraud, and behold the suicide of a race. Nevertheless, out of the evil came something of good, the more careful adjustments of education to real life, the clearer perception of the Negro's social responsibilities, and the sobering realization of the meaning of progress. So dawned the time of strum and jong, storm and stress. Today rocks our little boat in the mad waters of the world sea. There is within and without the sound of conflict, burning of body and rending of souls. Inspiration strives without doubt and faith, with vain questionings, the bright ideals of the past, physical freedom, political power, the training of the brains and the training of hands, all these in turn have waxed and waned, until even the last grows dim and overcast. Are they all wrong, all false? No, not that, but each alone was oversimple and incomplete, the dreams of a credulous race, childhood, or the fond imaginings of the other world, which does not know and does not want to know our power. To be really true, all these ideals must be melted and welded into one, the training of the schools we need today more than ever, the training of deft hands, quick eyes and ears, and above all, the broader, deeper, higher culture of gifted minds and pure hearts. The power of the ballot we need in sheer self-defense, else what shall save us from a second slavery? Freedom, too, the long sought, we still seek, the freedom of life and limb, the freedom to work and think, the freedom to love and aspire. Work, culture, liberty, all these we need, not singly but together, not successively but together, each growing and aiding each other, all striving towards the vaster ideal that swims before the Negro people, the ideal of human brotherhood. Gained through the unifying ideal of race, the ideal of fostering and developing the traits and talents of the Negro, not in opposition to or contempt for other races, but rather in large conformity to the greater ideals of the American Republic, in order that someday on American soil 2 world races may give each other those characteristics both so sadly lack. We, the darker ones, come even now not altogether empty-handed. There are today no truer exponents of the pure human spirit of the Declaration of Independence than the American Negroes. There is no true American music but the wild sweet melodies of the Negro slave. The American fairy tales and folklore are Indian and African. And all in all, we black men seem the sole oasis of simple faith and reverence in a dusty desert of dollars and smartness. Will America be poor if she replace her brutal, dyspeptic, blundering with light-hearted but determined Negro humility, or her coarse and cruel wit with loving, jovial good humor, or her vulgar music with the soul of the sorrow songs? Merely a concrete test of the underlying principles of the great republic is the Negro problem, and the spiritual striving of the freedom sun is the travail of souls whose burden is almost beyond the measure of their strength, but who bear it in name of an historic race, in the name of this land of their father's father, the name of human opportunity. And now I have briefly sketched in large outline, let me coming pages tell again, in many ways with loving emphasis and deeper detail, that men may listen to the striving in the souls of black